This is not just a war, it is a moral earthquake. A moment in history so defining that future generations will ask where we stood, what we believed, and whether we looked away. As the Russia-Ukraine conflict stretches into mid-2025, the fire intensifies, the costs deepen, and the world inches closer to an abyss many hoped never to face again. In the beginning, the world believed it was witnessing a regional skirmish, an echo of old imperial ambitions. But today, it is a brutal, full-scale confrontation that threatens the global order. Cities are bombed in the dead of night. Civilians sleep in metro stations, and the sound of sirens is as common as church bells once were. What began in 2014 reignited violently in 2022, and is now reaching a terrifying crescendo in 2025, a year that may mark the final turning point. Recent developments have shaken even the most desensitized observers. Ukrainian forces, bolstered by Western technology and tactical resilience, have begun launching deep drone strikes into the heart of Russia, targeting military installations, airfields, and logistics hubs. The Kremlin calls these attacks acts of terrorism, while Kiev insists they are legitimate defense against a genocidal occupier. In response, President Vladimir Putin has announced an increase of over 150,000 Russian troops to reinforce occupied territories. More chillingly, Russia has amended its nuclear doctrine, allowing the use of nuclear weapons not only in response to nuclear threats, but also when attacked by a non-nuclear nation supported by a nuclear one. In simple terms, if Western-backed Ukrainian attacks continue, Moscow is signaling it may consider the unthinkable, and then came the call. President Donald Trump, in an unannounced diplomatic attempt, placed a direct call to President Putin, urging de-escalation. It was a final effort, a plea from one power to another to stop the spiral before it reaches the point of no return. But what came next stunned global observers. Putin refused the call. Not only did he reject the offer to negotiate, the Kremlin released a statement saying, "There will be no talks under pressure. Russia will respond to Ukrainian aggression in the coming days, decisively." The world was silent for a moment. That silence wasn't peace. It was the calm before what many fear is an even greater storm. In the diplomatic arena, the situation is equally grim. Peace talks in Istanbul have failed yet again. Russia demands Ukraine surrender 4 entire regions, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia, and guarantees it will never join NATO. Ukraine refuses. President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a now viral speech, declared, "This is not about territory. It is about existence, about freedom, about a future where we are not slaves to tyranny." The West stands behind Ukraine, but not without hesitation. The United States, under Trump's renewed leadership, walks a fine line. Military aid continues, but direct intervention is off the table. Trump, when pressed, said, "It's a tough one, but peace will not come through weakness." Inside NATO, divisions grow. Poland and the Baltics urge decisive action. Germany and Hungary push for caution. The alliance trembles, but it has not broken. What makes this conflict so devastating is not just the scale of destruction, but the silence of the dead and the screams of the living. In Mariupol, mothers search rubble for toys their children once played with. In Kharkiv, a boy with no legs draws tanks on broken pavement. In Bakhmut, hospitals are no more than tents stitched together with hope. Civilians have become targets. Journalists have become soldiers. Teachers have become medics. Life as it was is gone, replaced by a daily struggle to survive under bombs, under fear, under the shadow of global apathy. And yet this is not just a Ukrainian tragedy. It is a global warning. The war is reshaping geopolitics. China, watching silently, expands its influence in Southeast Asia. Iran increases drone exports to Russian forces. North Korea launches missiles in solidarity. The United Nations speaks of peace, but its resolutions gather dust. Meanwhile, the world economy stutters. Gas prices surge. Food shortages spike across Africa due to disrupted Ukrainian grain exports. The ripple effect of this war is not bound by Europe's borders. It bleeds across continents, cultures, and currencies. The threat of nuclear escalation is now discussed not in whispers, but in policy briefings. What if Russia tests a tactical nuclear device in a deserted area? What if Ukraine seizes Crimea? What if Belarus fully enters the war? These questions were hypothetical once. Now they are models being run in war rooms from Brussels to Beijing. We live in an age where one missile could alter the fate of humanity. That is not hyperbole. That is 2025. But amid the destruction, there is resilience. Ukrainian volunteers rebuild schools even as the front lines shift. Russian dissidents risk everything to speak out against their government's aggression. Artists paint murals over craters. Farmers plant wheat next to unexploded mines. This war has created heroes. Not the kind in uniforms alone, but the kind who hold a classroom together, who sing lullabies in bunkers, who drive ambulances into artillery fire because someone must. This documentary is not just a story about war. It is about the choices we make in the face of it. Do we scroll past? Do we say, it's too far away to matter? Or do we understand that every life lost in Kiev, in Kherson, in Zaporizhzhia, is a blow to the moral fabric of our shared humanity? The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is not a remote clash between two neighbors. It is a proxy battlefield for democracy, sovereignty, truth, and the soul of the modern world. In the coming weeks, things may escalate. Intelligence reports suggest Russia is preparing a large-scale offensive using hypersonic missiles. Ukraine is mobilizing more territorial defense units. Western nations are considering secondary sanctions on countries that still purchase Russian energy. Peace remains a distant hope, not because it is impossible, but because both sides are now entrenched in existential survival. So what can we do? We can tell the truth. We can debate this war not as politicians, but as humans who believe that the price of silence is far too high. We can support humanitarian aid, elevate voices from the ground, challenge propaganda, and stay informed. We can ask difficult questions. How much are we willing to risk for freedom? What is the cost of ignoring aggression? History is not something we read about. It is something we live through. And right now, in every air raid, every treaty, every protest, history is being written. The ink is blood. The paper is the lives of millions, and the pen is in our collective hands. The world must not look away. Share the story. Engage in the debate. Be part of the solution. Because this isn't the final chapter. It's only the most dangerous one yet.